Well, Gimli's pretty excited right now, and I am too, because we just got word that Ungrim Ironfist, the Slayer King, is getting his own unique start position in Karak Kadrin. It has been a long time coming. And you don't have to be a fan of the Dawi for this news to stir your loins, because there are much bigger implications at work here. And the Dwarfs aren't my favorite faction in this trilogy, not by a long shot, but I'm happy for my Dawi brethren, because more than anything, it's a really good sign of things to come. This is essentially a complete overhaul for a faction that came out 2 years ago, and is an extremely good indication that races like the Empire and the other underutilized races of mortal empires will be getting more love as we continue down the road towards Total War Warhammer 3. So what is our boy Alejandro Ironfist actually receiving in the coming Norsca patch? Well, the new start position is number 1, and those are always going to be welcome in Mortal Empire's campaign, as long as it fits the lore. And it most certainly does in this situation. There are plenty of other lords in the game who don't need their own start, who belong in the same city as their faction leader. I think Franz and Gelt in Altdorf as a prime example. But yes, Ungrim, from the start, should have been in the Slayer Keep, and it's awesome to see him finally get moved. He's going to have a pretty unique campaign there, a lot of battling vampires in Sylvania, and even striking northwards towards Norsca. But if they're going to continue going down this route of giving Old World lords unique start positions, which I'm all for, they need to finally fix that Confederation issue that prevents you from recruiting a legendary lord who is wounded at the time of Confederation. There is no reason whatsoever that just because a sub-faction lord is wounded at the time, that he shouldn't go back into the recruitment pool and allow players to create an army with him once he's healed from his injuries. That is, right now, by far the biggest issue with Confederations in Total War Warhammer. And the biggest reason, some people don't like it when we get new start positions, because it means they can't play with multiple legendary lords in a single playthrough. And that should not be the case, so CA finally needs to address that problem. Now, if you look at the top right of the screen, you can see he actually has a unique preferred climate, which in and of itself will be pretty game-changing for the Karak Kadrin campaign. Frozen climate means he can head into Norsca and colonize there without penalty, which is quite different from the other Dwarf Lords. Currently in Total War Warhammer 2, Ungrim can only colonize Savannah, Wasteland, and Mountain as suitable climates, but it looks like that's about to change. So I imagine they'll be dropping Savannah, adding Frozen, and that should make him uniquely suited to waging war in both Nagaroth and near the Chaos Waste. So you'll be incentivized to expand in a much different way than Thorgrim on the Silver Road or Belegar in the race for Karak 8 Peaks. On top of that, in the bottom right of the screen, you can see a new part of the UI that looks suspiciously like a rune-forged hammer and anvil. I wonder what that could possibly mean. Well, it seems pretty apparent. Creative Assembly has taken the item crafting system from the Tomb Kings and given it to the Dwarfs as well, who in all of Warhammer Fantasy are uniquely suited for a mechanic that allows them to create powerful weapons and armor. Because after all, it was Gal Moraz, Skullsplitter, the very symbol of the Warhammer universe, that was crafted by the Dwarfs and gifted to Sigmar Heldenhammer. And they're known throughout the planet for their skill at the forge. So this is a very welcome addition, a flavorful one that should add quite a bit to our Dawi campaigns. And on top of that, you can see that there's also a new resource at the top being added, perhaps Gromro, that will also tie into this new item crafting mechanic as well. Now, if you've never seen the Mortuary Cult mechanic for the Tomb Kings in action, it looks like this, and essentially gives you the opportunity to craft certain weapons with unique effects, bound spells, armor, enchanted items with AoE debuffs or single target bonuses, and talismans with which to equip on your legendary lords and heroes. Really adds a ton of flavor to the Tomb Kings campaign, and it fits very well with the Dwarfs, so I'm very happy the Dawi are finally getting that. And you're going to see some really cool stuff too. For the Tomb Kings, essentially, there's one that gives them a banishment spell Vortex on one of the items they can equip. So there's like a lot of that stuff that will completely change how your Dawi lords play on the battlefield, which I'm really looking forward to. And honestly, I think this is the correct way to address changes for old world factions as we move forward. Of course, I would love to see a lot more come in this patch for other races as well, given that it's been since January since our last one. But I also don't have a problem with CA using each patch to go all in with one particular faction to bring it up to Game 2 standards. If this is the start of a trend where every single big patch, a different Game 1 race gets updated, I will be perfectly happy with that, and it might very well be. At the end of the little teaser drop today, CA told us more changes are coming, which you can read a couple of ways. Either it's not really a hint towards anything at all, which means the marketing hype team might shoot into overdrive as early as Thursday with a trailer, because they have nothing left to tease before they start actually showing us the big stuff, or it's like how they've handled each one of these Tuesday news days over the last several weeks, and it's a clue towards the next info dump. As we saw with the Norsca hunts, the Giant Slayers, and the Skaven food rework, each of those announcements were hinted at before it became public knowledge. The optimist in me wants that change is coming, change, to mean something Tzeentch for the Warriors of Chaos. Again, I don't expect to get an overhaul for that faction until Game 3. I don't expect new units outside the 30th Anniversary Regiments of Renown either, but what could very well be happening is Sartorial the Everwatcher, the Lord of Change and Greater Demon of Tzeentch, finally becoming playable in Mortal Empire's campaign. If that happens, it will be a pale shadow of the true horrors Tzeentch will unleash on the battlefields of Total War Warhammer 3, but it will still be a very nice teaser and a unique Warriors of Chaos campaign nonetheless, and I'm never going to turn down extra legendary lords. It'll still be a very good thing for the game. Definitely make a lot of people very happy. So let me know in the comment section below, is that hinting towards the next Tuesday Newsday? And if so, what do you think it will be? Do you think Sartorial has a chance of being added as a campaign lord now? Or do you think that's talking about something else? In terms of other news, a DLC that I first mentioned in my Aleth Nar and Malice Darkblade Legendary Lord Spotlights in 2017, and later dedicated an entire video to in November of 2017, is all but confirmed at this point. The Queen and the Crone, with that exact title, looks like it will be dropping alongside Norsca at the end of May. How do we know? Well, on IMDb and a particular voice actor's own resume page, Joel Gorf is playing a Lordmaster of Hoeth and a Shadow Walker in the upcoming The Queen and the Crone DLC. Now, this isn't explicit confirmation yet, but the fact that it's also on his own website, which cannot be edited by regular people, unlike IMDb, gives us pretty good indication that it's legit, unless it's CA trying to lead us down some extra path as a joke, but that seems like a lot of work. I think it's a lot more likely it's just a leak, and considering everything else we already know, it's highly likely that a High Elf or Dark Elf Lord pack was coming anyway, so might be confirmation bias there, but I'd say there's a very good chance at this point that Alarielle and Hellebron are coming soon. I'm not going to go into details on what that DLC will actually include, other than the fact that, again, it hints at Alarielle the Everqueen and Crone Hellebron coming in that Lord pack, because I've already done a video on it, and the units that could possibly come with it, and we're going to be getting news on the Lord pack very soon anyway, but it does feel pretty good to guess that 7 months before the actual release date. Time will tell in very short order if my predictions were actually correct, but it's looking that way. Couple things I want to address in more detail before we finish up. Aban's fam on YouTube and Sarkanos on Total War forums have shown some really good evidence of two of the visual problems plaguing Mortal Empires since its launch some 7 months ago. For SSAO, you can see on this screenshot the incredibly ugly grainy aura that shows up on a lot of certain maps, particularly desert and snow are a big factor there, and it creates this very strange shadow effect that completely surrounds units and just kind of hangs off of them. You've seen it in my videos before. There's tons of evidence on it on YouTube and on Total War forums and a bunch of different screenshots on Reddit as well. But this is absolutely something that needs to be addressed. It's been in the game entirely too long, and it just looks bad. They've at least acknowledged the problem so far and said they're working on it, but it's been plaguing the game for literally 8 months, and I just want it to finally get addressed in the Norsca patch. So hopefully it does. You can just see that aura that just surrounds units, and especially when they start moving, you can see it kind of shift, and it just looks absolutely atrocious. But in a separate but similar issue, flickering shadows have also been a problem since launch, where at quite a few different angles, the shadows of units will malform and dance around, and it can really take you out of the moment when you're trying to get cinematic shots or just take in the scenery. Aban's fam captured it on YouTube perfectly, where you can see this High Elf Spearman regiment are standing completely still, but as he moves the camera around, the shadows will completely lose their clarity and waver around the edges, even on ultra or extreme settings. And for a game as beautiful as this one, having two separate issues with shadows that aren't working properly is pretty disappointing. Both are visual problems that have been in the game since day one, and I would like to see them finally get fixed with Norsca. In terms of campaigns, outside the problem with confederations and being unable to recruit legendary lords when you confederate, Beastmen destroying everything in auto-resolve is also a significant problem that needs to be fixed. They leave both Nagaroth and the Empire smoking ruin in almost all of my campaigns, and it's because their auto-resolve is completely bugged currently, giving them huge bonuses and letting them win battles they should not have any hope of winning. The important thing is that CA doesn't take a Warhammer to the problem when a scalpel will suffice just fine. We don't want Bray Herds being made completely useless either. We want them to be impactful, but not gods of war that always win every battle and every war they go into. And I realize it's a pretty difficult balance to be struck, right? And it's fine for Beastmen to win sometimes and have a big effect on a campaign. I don't want them to be nerfed into oblivion, but when it happens every single time, when every single time they're completely destroying Malekith and Nagaroth, completely running over the Empire and sacking everything in sight, and basically huge swaths of the world are burned to nothing, and Brayherds are winning fights in auto-resolve they have no business winning, then it becomes an issue. Same thing with the Dawi Tide that plagued mortal empires a few patches back, but I'd argue the Beastmen issue might even be worse simply because they corruption bomb and raise everything in their path, and at least with the Dwarfs, you could get into a big epic war with them. With the Warherds, you're just kind of sifting through ash and it gets very boring. So yeah, this content update is already shaping up to be one of the biggest CA has ever released in the history of Total War, and there's still a bunch of information to come. Norsca is making its long-awaited return with updated hunts and tech trees. We're getting a complete overhaul for the Dwarfs. We're likely getting a High Elf and Dark Elf Lord pack with new units. We're getting the 30th Anniversary Regiments of Renown, possibly additional content for Chaos, an overhaul for Skaven food mechanics, and a free LC Lord from the content schedule on top of numerous balancing changes as well. It's going to be a really good time. I'm really looking forward to it, and I will definitely be seeing you guys again when the Lord pack is officially announced. But until then, have a wonderful day. Indie Pride, signing out for now.